Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joe, I'm one of your hosts. With me as always is the other salubrious host.
Brian, hi. What's salubrious mean again?
Having the quality of being healthy and pleasant.
Oh, okay. I heard a twinge of one of Hank Hill's friends there in your voice when you were doing and with me as always it's so much. Yeah, I think you might be developing a southern twang because we were watching too much King of the Hill.
I was going to say it is King of the Hill set in the American South, but it is set in Texas.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, there are parts of Texas that you probably wouldn't consider to be culturally very safe. Like Austin is very liberal, stuff like that. But yeah, there you go.
So this week on Buffy Boys, we are talking about Season 5, Episode 3 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Replacement.
Yes. So that was directed by James A. Contner, who last directed Primeval. It was written by Jane Espenson, who last wrote Superstar, and who we all know very well. And it was first aired on a date that I am looking up right now because I didn't take it down in my notes for some reason. Probably because it's been a week and it's only Monday. Okay, so it was first aired on October 10th, 2000. And here is your Buffy on summary. Would you like Buffy on summary, Joe?
Please.
I'm not going to do it unless you beg.
Grease me up with that summary, Brian.
That's the most disgusting thing you've ever said.
No, it's not. No, it's absolutely not.
Okay. Oh no, Joe. This spans 2 different pages on the book. I'm going to have so much difficulty. This is going to require so much editing.
Some of your trademark focus.
Okay. The demon Toth shoots at Buffy with a magic rod but hits Xander. Suddenly there are 2 Xanders, one suave and confident, the other dorky and clumsy. Both think the other is a demon. In fact, both are aspects of Xander and need to survive. Willow reintegrates them. Xander and Anya get an apartment. Riley confides in a sympathetic Xander that he knows how lucky he is, but Buffy does not love him. That was all very inconsistent, and also doesn't mention the fact that they killed the monster in the end.
I, for one, associate a successful suave person with continence. It's really one of the defining factors, I think, of both personal, professional, romantic success is sustained continence.
So, Joel, you know the way, as a society, one of the only facets we've developed is an ability to rate people on a 0 to 10 scale. Mm-hmm. What would you usually give Xander Harris?
As a person?
What would you give him out of 10? Hotness-wise?
Oh, attractiveness wise. 6.
6. Okay.
6, I think.
That's a generous 6, I think. And what would you give Sexy Xander? Yeah,
probably like a 7.5 or an 8.
I think I think a 7 is about right in the sense that he's still kind of creepy. And he still dresses bad even though he dresses better.
Yeah, but the thing is, he also is I bought this apartment, I am successful financially, I'm all that kind of stuff is working for him as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
But he has the very upsetting thing where if you're talking to him, he might be sitting there shining a coin in your face, just shining it into your eyes, and enjoying himself by shining it into your eyes for no fucking reason.
Yeah, it would be incredibly frustrating to be around someone who just physics with small objects while they're talking to you for their own pleasure.
When I was in 3rd class, I got in trouble one time because I had a new watch. I was really obsessed. I thought it was amazing, so I kept catching the light and I was like, this is incredible. And the teacher gave it out to me because I kept shining in her eyes. I actually didn't mean to. Maybe I did. No, I don't think I did. That was the teacher I liked, actually.
I imagine this was all through Irish as well.
Yeah, Oscar. Okay, so Joe, what do you want to talk about this week for the Bronze Band?
Bronze Band True. What I want to talk about is the fact that we've been watching a lot of anime, far too much anime, perhaps.
We have been, hooking it to our veins.
I don't know what it is in our brain chemistry that shifted the pH balance of our senses recently. We were we need to watch a lot of anime, but it has happened.
So I think the main thing that happened was that I was let's watch this show called Hunter x Hunter, which also is pronounced Hunter x Hunter because
the X is silent.
The X is silent. Which is a shonen, which for anime people who are sane people who don't go insane periodically. Shonen, or one of the many genres of anime, basically means young preteen to young teenage boy. Story, you get other things like magical girl or I don't know. Neon Genesis Evangelion is not shonen. It's the like next one up. It's the like teenage boy thing, and I can't remember what it's called.
It's often characterized by
mechas,
powers, seeking fame and fortune,
extreme like fight scenes. But Hunter x Hunter, we stuck on a couple of weeks ago, and we're like, okay, we'll put this on, and it's just like, it's so enjoyable because it moves along at such a pace. There's no faffing about. There's no like, previously on Hunter x Hunter. It's just like, get into it. A huge amount of content in one episode.
Yeah.
And insane shit happens. There's some clown who keeps licking his lips at young boys.
He does. He's a pervert. So I suppose, while not, I think, strictly anime in the probably traditional sense, one of the Western developments or Western exports that people be most familiar with are things like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! From when we were growing up.
Both animes, absolutely.
They definitely, like, I know they're within the wider constellation of anime, but I think there is, outside the solar system of anime, in the Book's void, is stuff that looks anime-esque but isn't actually developed with that sensibility, like a Voltron or a She-Ra, even to a certain extent.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's, I think, slightly closer stuff like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh!, which are definitely animes but are very very marketed to a Western audience and often developed in co-developed with Western companies.
What I always find interesting is people our age, so I'm not sure what TV shows they were watching, but they were growing up at the same time as us. They managed to watch a lot of Sailor Moon, a lot of Dragon Ball.
Card captors.
And card captors. I watched a reasonable amount of card captors myself because whenever I was at my granny's house, they had Nickelodeon and I got to watch on that. But people our age have watched from Ireland, because because it was the 90s, where you were growing up dictated what you're able to watch realistically. So yeah, a lot of them managed to watch a lot of Sailor Moon specifically, and I never even got a chance to watch a single episode, which I'm pissed about. But all those would be like the other, I think those would be the big ones. Your Sailor Moons, your Dragon Ball, your Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh. That's pretty it.
And if you look at a Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, and specific, definitely Yu-Gi-Oh, but Pokemon to a certain degree, not a lot necessarily happens in a given episode. You have the first third of it is a recap of what happened last time. The last third of it is like a final confrontation or a preview of what's going to happen, and then it moves along a little bit in the middle. That's definitely what I felt with Yu-Gi-Oh! I was like, fuck's sake, I watched like 5 episodes of this and nothing's happened. Whereas to the point with Hunter x Hunter, I think what we really enjoy is that I could say everything that happens over the course of the entirety of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series happens within the first 15 episodes of Hunter x Hunter, in terms of how quickly it progresses.
It's also nice because like Hunter x Hunter, there was one, basically there's like 6 major arcs. One of them is like 60 episodes long, which is crazy, or maybe more. Anyway, the first arc is like them doing this big old test, try to become hunters. And one of the trials is basically they all have to like face down an opponent within this one room. So I'd say 10 episodes take place within this one room.
Yeah.
And yet stuff is happening constantly. So it's constantly moving forward. There's constant discussion. And there's no rethreading, which I appreciate. Yeah,
and very importantly, you might be asking, what's a hunter? You're asking too many questions.
Yeah,
too many questions.
We don't know what a hunter is.
There's like monsters, and you have to take adventures on sailing boats, and things are like done by trial to death by combat, and yet they do have cell phones and the internet. And
video games.
The arc one currently is like, hey, my brother, the master assassin, has found the URL we need to log into the hunter's website. So it's bizarre.
It's really good fun. I like it. And the other ones we've been watching, we started another rewatch of Neon Genesis Evangelion last night, which I presume we've talked about on the podcast before, but it's one of my favorite shows. And we're watching the Netflix re-release, which has different dubs, because we watch anime dubbed because we're absolute like pricks, whatever. But the new dub cast is I'm not a fan of it so far, I must say, but it's Evangelion, so I love it. Yeah,
I feel like this time around watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, I will get it. I feel like my brain has been soaked in the LCL of this particular subculture enough. But it's kind of fascinating because I love the minutiae and the broken toys of these kind of subcultures and fandoms as much as the content itself, and something like Neon Genesis is like so rich for that, because
it's such a mishmash
troubled production, and it's being recreated and re-released and re-edited in response to fan response, and there's been sequel films, but fascinatingly all using the same characters. And there's a crucial bit towards the end of the original run of Neon Genesis Evangelion where they envision a hypothetical parallel timeline where they're actually all just normal teenagers, basically, in a traditional kind of like manga-esque high school setting. There is an entire series of
movies,
manga
right?
and movies and stuff that's been made in that world.
Yeah.
Which I just find really, really interesting. And then probably lastly, and the one that's probably most in my wheelhouse that we finished is Cowboy Bebop, which we may have mentioned before, but which is basically like from the 90s, what Firefly was trying to do, but much longer ago and much better. And it's in the vein of basically like, yes, they're space kind of bounty hunters, but it's like this Western frontier kind of feeling, but also a noir story about someone who escaped a gang and etc.
Beautifully animated.
Absolutely beautifully animated, and to the point where you realize that the best products of this genre or of this medium are ones where each shot is done with care rather than from rote to a certain degree. But yeah, Cowboy Bebop, only 26 episodes long, immensely watchable, and probably some of the best science fiction I've ever seen. And that's, not something I say lightly,
Yeah,
So
I don't think we're alone in recommending Cowboy Bebop. I think it's the one that like appears at the top of most best anime lists. But yeah, so those are the animes we've been watching. If you want to stop listening to our podcast now, I don't blame you, given that information. But also, I would suggest maybe you're a bit racist for thinking that only cartoons that are Western are good.
So on that note,
and also all Western cartoons are almost all Western cartoons have some animation done for them in Asia. Like, I mean, you can actually tell episode to episode in Korra which ones were animated in Korea.
There's some story here about your mother, I think, isn't there?
There is. So sorry, Mom. I know you've listened to our podcast. Joking, my mother refuses to listen to a single second of it, but she used to give out to us for watching anime when we were younger. When Pokemon was big and we were like watching it and super into it, she used to tell us that there was no point in watching it because the animation was so lazy in all Japanese cartoons.
A sweeping statement.
Like, yeah. Anyway, so when I watched a Ghibli movie for the first time, or Ghibli, however you want to pronounce it,
I might be wrong, but I prefer her G's. I like Evangelion, I like Ghibli, etc.
Yeah, it's definitely wrong. It's Ghibli, but anyway.
Well, I don't care.
Yeah. But yeah, when I watched that for the first time, I was like, wait, this is maybe the best animation of any movie I've ever seen, but it's Japanese. My brain, it breaks. Yeah. What is happening? Anyway, blasting straight on forward.
Oh, you're setting me up for a difficult transition here.
I always was convinced, because of stuff like that I was probably a changeling or adopted somehow.
Convinced or hoped.
Yeah. It was almost like there was like some sort of a doppelganger of me out there.
So speaking of The Replacement, this is the classic.
I lined you up there.
That was good. Yeah, I know. I pivoted off Doppelganger to The Replacement.
Okay, perfect. Go on.
I think one of your, if you were an anime character, one of your fatal flaws is your inability to recognize when things are actually like doing the thing you want them to do.
That's true.
So this is the classic episode of Buffy, season 5, where there are two Xander instances, and notably, I think he actually gave a fairly solid summary. The main thing is that he's split into, Xander defends Buffy from a demon attack, and for the majority of the episode is of the opinion that there is a demonic doppelganger of him taking over his life. But what in fact happens is that he is split into two components. The aim of the plan for the demon was to split Buffy into a distilled Slayer only version and then a human non-Slayer version, and if the human version was killed, the Slayer version would die as well. And with Xander, what happens is splits him into his essentially confident and focused components and his insecure and nominally weaker components. And so probably well known for being an episode where Nicholas Brennan's brother Kelly Donovan, his twin brother, plays some of the scenes where they're in the same space together as well. And yeah, so I think overall a real solid example of what we've been characterizing as the sitcom-like qualities of season 5 going forward. It's very much perhaps light in some ways on the actual conflict and more about them hanging out, watching movies. Anya and Xander's relationship, they go to rent an apartment, Giles takes over the lease of the magic shop. It's all very domestic to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think these early episodes, I think there's probably some anxiety in the writer's room that Dawn's injection will have really cast aspersion or question marks over the gang's interactions and their structure, so that they have to essentially be like, oh no, we're still going to we have to show that, like, you know, this dynamic still exists and still works. So they really did focus in these early episodes in season 5 on that gang dynamic and the interactions between the separate characters. So yeah, this is an Espenson-sode through and through. Like it just reeks of, that sounds bad, it smacks of Jane Espenson's kind of like very comedic, very tightly scripted, very playful tone, which I really appreciate. A
deep understanding of the characters as well,
yeah,
and where you can push them into unusual kind of configurations.
So and very interestingly, you know what are so we'll probably talk about this later, but let's talk about it now. So there's a literal reference to Star Trek in this episode, and there's an episode to Babylon 5, which I'm sure you hated, but I was
surprised at the reference to Babylon 5 actually, but yeah.
But the Xander at one point when they're joking about like, oh, it's both of us or one of us is the doppelganger or whatever, they both say, kill us both, Spock, which is a reference to some episode of Star Trek, but not the episode of Star Trek where it's actually blah blah blah.
So it is a reference and searching into the episode to a classic episode of the original series of Star Trek where Kirk is confronted with a doppelganger, and how Spock realizes that he is in fact the true Kirk is because he says, one of them, the real one, says, kill us both, Spock, it's the only way to make certain the ship will be safe. And he's like, well, obviously this is the real Kirk, so shoots the other guy,
using logic,
and there's also a whole thing about, you know, for the first time going down a away mission, they're like, you need a code word to beam back up, and it's like a chess move. It's like, yep, and Knight the King 3, etc.
Yeah, one of us cannot lie, and the other one can only tell the truth.
Yeah, it's a real brain teasers. Yeah, but
what I said was hilarious, and you just steamrolled right past it. I don't think you hear what I said.
One of us can only lie, and the other one can only tell the truth.
No, one of us cannot lie, and the other one can only tell the truth.
Well, yeah, that would be more straightforward. I still don't know what the traditional answer to that is.
I'll tell you later.
You can tell me later. But the episode of the original series, which is being referenced there, is Whom Gods Destroy, in which the other Kirk is actually a doppelganger. Whereas there is another episode called The Enemy Within, where he is split into both his weaker, compassionate parts and his more aggressive, powerful parts. And they equally, as in this episode, come to realize that they need both of them together to be a whole person, which is just not necessarily a mistake or incorrect, but like an interesting parallel.
Yep,
I think. And also fodder for nerds like me.
So, I presume you somewhat know this, but Jane Espenson's actually quite a big Star Trek fan. And when she was like studying, she submitted a bunch of spec scripts to Star Trek because
very good.
She's like, and I don't know if she got one of them produced. I was trying to find it out, but she talked about that in Gilmore Guys at one point. And, but like, yeah, it's one of the only places in Hollywood where they by policy accept scripts from the open call for scripts.
Yeah, the Star Trek has always accepted scripts from randomers basically, and has on multiple occasions taken scripts from people just off the street that were good enough and paid them for it and turned it into episodes.
Imagine being that like intern who has to read all the submissions coming through the door. You die.
Yeah, I think particularly there was one guy who...
Oh, she wrote an episode of DS9.
Which episode?
She wrote... Okay, yeah, so here's the information for you. That's the actual information. So she actually did sell 2 story ideas to Star Trek TNG, one involving a warp drive damaging space-time, force of nature, and then...
environmental.
Oh, cool. And then the DS9 episode she wrote was Accession. Do you know that? Let me just find out for you now. It's the episode where A 300-year-old Bajoran ship comes through the wormhole, and its passengers claims that he is the emissary of the prophets. So it's from season 4, episode 17.
That's a very good episode as well. That's
there you go.
Specifically a very, very good episode. And it's, DS9 has weirdly showed that deals a lot with religion, which is something that Star Trek has always avoided. But they make the main character involuntarily the prophet of a religion, and this episode is about, like, well, what if you could hand that off to someone else? But the guy who comes through is from a much more conservative era, so he wants, like, it's not women to go back in the home, but it's like, I think women can't be in the military anymore.
Okay.
So it's all about going back to the traditional way of life, and so the main character has to be like, okay, no, actually I will shepherd this. So they're both strong episodes. I'm not surprised.
Sorry. So well, if you're just tuning in now, welcome to our podcast. Trek
DS9 Devils
tops. DS9 Devils. Okay. So yeah, she's a Star Trek fan.
So what did you think of the group dynamics in this episode?
Yeah, great. So the beginning of the episode, I really enjoyed just the idea that Anya and Xander and Riley and Buffy would all just be watching a Bruce Lee movie, but probably not.
It was
Bruce
a Kung Fu movie. I don't know that it was specifically.
I think they said it was
Lee.
Chinese, but I mean that could just be mistaken. So yes, that was really enjoyable. I enjoyed
Buffy being like, "This isn't how you would fight someone," and just kind of being a bit of a busman's holiday about it.
Yeah, exactly. And when she. It was also nice, I think, in the sense that, like, I think it really showed up that Riley is not a good part of the gang. Whenever he tries to inject some information or chirp in, it, like, stops the conversation, or it's kind of awkward. Like when he suggests that he put the two Xanders in cages and study them.
Yeah. Like, he's a nice person.
Yeah.
But he's not necessarily a fun person. And you see, there's a fundamental part of the gang, which is playfulness, and he's not a playful person.
I mean, like, two of the, like, notable scenes in the episode with Riley are when Xander walks into the bedroom of his prospective apartment and they're just making out bizarrely.
Sorry, an absolutely wild scene where he goes to view this apartment with his 5 friends, and within seconds Buffy and Riley go into the bedroom and start making out.
Yeah, and Tara can just get fucked. She wasn't invited.
Yeah.
And then there's another part of the episode where Buffy and Riley are talking and kissing in their room, and Dawn starts gagging from the doorway. So it's like Riley's just there for kisses.
Yeah.
And back rubs. Like at the beginning of the episode, Buffy just is entirely ignoring him. So for me, and later on in the episode, he's talking about how he loves the entirety of Buffy. He loves the Slayer and Buffy. And she's like, that's nice. She doesn't say I love you back or anything. I don't think she ever has said I love you to him. And he said it a couple of times now.
I can't think of any time that she would have.
Yeah, so I thought the group dynamics are really on point at the moment, and it's really highlighting how much of a sore thumb Riley is.
And I think, something I've always thought that Anya gives a great dimension to Xander's character, and not that that's her function and shouldn't be her function, but relationships.
She can also reflect. I mean, a part of character is how they reflect the characters around them. Like, they can have a character to themselves while also. Yeah, so if she only existed to reflect Xander, exactly. Which she absolutely doesn't, she has her own very distinct personality. Yeah, which
is great. It's I think a very unexpected addition to the show in many ways. I wouldn't have plotted it. I might not have done it myself, but I think it's very valuable. And I think it's softens him. I think it gives him focus. I absolutely love the scene where he's trying to convince Willow that he is the real Xander, and he's like, "Oh, Anya, I have to go and protect her. Whatever happens to me, like, I need her. She's so important to me." And Willow's like, really?
Yeah.
Anya?
There's a really uncomfortable line there where she's like, he can't have her, I need her. And it's a really, that's kind of a very telling of how the Xander and Anya relationship ends up, which, spoilers if you haven't watched season 6, they don't get married. She dies with them not having reconciled in season 7. But it's
a classic codependency, really.
Yeah, he kind of sees her as like a thing that he needs rather than a person, or like, I need to save Anya because she's wonderful and I love her, and etc.
She's what I do, and like she's a direction in life, as opposed to being someone who's necessarily on a journey with him. She is the journey.
Yeah, exactly. So but I mean, I definitely think Anya in this episode was a great level because she was quite understated through the episode. She didn't have any look at me moments. Emma Caulfield didn't really do that, but she was consistently giving quirky, odd Anya goodness. Yeah. So and there's also a sad element to that as well, where she kind of realizes she's talking to Xander to suave Xander towards the end, where she's saying he kind of realizes that she feels mortal for the first time because she's broken her arm or dislocated her shoulder because of Dawn's idiocy, and she feels like hurt, and she's like, oh god, I'm going to die someday.
I think it cements their, like, it really enforces their relationship to a large degree, and gives context for the various in a capsule, kind of gives context for the relationship very well. And it's weirdly, like, I wouldn't think an episode which is just Xander following Xander around would be compelling to watch, but there's something they do, I think, a tremendous job in making Suave Xander's actions and dialogue seem at once incredibly suspicious and demonic, but on an informed rewatch just be like, this is a perfectly normal thing that has a sinister soundtrack underneath it. Yeah,
of course, the only thing not being okay being the fact that he just sits in his meetings with both the realtor and the foreman of the construction site, sitting there shining this penny in their eyes for no fucking reason, just being a rude person.
So, like, it's basically a singing universe MacGuffin where Xander thinks that this disc he's using is a hypnotizing disc, and that's what makes everyone agree with him. And Xander's like, no, I just found this crushed penny and it's really cool, so I've been playing with it. Yeah. But it is like, he is definitely trying to blind these people he's talking to at the same time. But also that realtor who was like, given the context,
coming on to him.
Given the context that she wasn't under any influence and she met him with his girlfriend, is just like, please have sex with me.
I'm so worried for her. Like, her immediate reaction to finding out that this man lives in his parents' basement is, gotta have sex with this guy.
That's more her own damage, I think. She's on a different show.
So one of the major, I think, things of this episode and this season going forward is going to be the idea of split personalities, and we get even textual references to Buffy kind of trying to explore the idea of what it means to be Buffy and what it means to be the Slayer within the episode, because when they find out that it was Buffy who was intended to be bonked by the twin stick,
Follicular Gemini?
Follicular Gemini?
Yeah.
Anyway, Gemini, actually, what it was. But Gemini, basically. When they find this out, they leave, and Riley and her are talking, and she's saying, oh, would you have wanted it to be me who was hit so that you could have a normal Buffy separate to the kind of this Buffy who is a Slayer? So we're going to be talking a lot about integration of personality, of multiplicity within self, and trying to integrate that throughout the season, which would be good.
Yeah, I think it's very relevant when we have a central villain who emulates so many aspects of Buffy rather than counterpoints or contrasts with them. And I think in terms of those kind of dynamics, and I think there's a stuggy point here in trying to make the first few episodes quite grounded in many ways, because you have introduced this like foundational change with Dawn, and she is just kind of like a background aspect of this episode in a way that the little sister character would be if she'd always been there, which I think is quite useful.
There is a very sad note though where Joyce is going out to them for giving her a headache because they're fighting, and of course that is a foreshadowing to the next episode and the rest of the season, where the next episode she gets hospitalized for her brain tumor. Tumor. And then later on in the season dies from it. There's a lot of foreshadowing in that. Obviously foreshadowing rather than like live foreshadowing, specifically foreshadowing stuff like Riley and Buffy's breakup, and also the introduction of a I think we can agree a fairly controversial and divisive element of the show, which is Spike's obsession with Buffy, with them finding him in the dump and him collecting body parts,
mannequin parts, to make a faux Buffy. So that's a thread which I would think we'll have a lot more time to pull at as the show goes on, but it's a very distinctive writing choice, I think, for Spike.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I think the most important thing about this episode is that it's genuinely very comedic. It's
very funny.
It was very funny. It was well written. There's no loose notes. There's no like lack of tension. There's no lack of pace. It was very, very accomplished as a comedic weekly episode, while kind of doing that season 5 thing of kind of keeping things moving along in terms of the group dynamics, etc.
Yeah.
So Jaws is in the magic shop.
Jaws gets assaulted in the magic shop before it's even opened, which
but he doesn't even get knocked out though.
He doesn't. He's doing better, but I do appreciate that they just really acknowledge that he's obviously doing something very risky by taking on this job.
But I do love the magic shop setting. I think it's so cool. Anyway,
I think it's a tip top comedic moment for the series has to be just like this like drowned rat of Xander in Willow's bedroom and trying to convince her that he is Xander. Her having no reason to doubt him at this point, but just being like, yeah, go ahead, and him like desperately, manically doing the Snoopy dance to her.
No, it's great. It's a great moment. Yeah, and then I'm not sure if we said this, but at the end of the episode, Riley and Xander are talking. They're kind of talking about the growth that Xander's going through, or whatever, and Xander
change.
Yeah, change. And Xander's looking at the places where Spike did various disgusting things within their apartment.
Where he had his heart ripped out as well, where they drowned a demon, all those great memories, yeah.
So, and Xander says, you're so lucky to have Buffy. And Riley says, yeah, but she doesn't love me. And you better get used to that moment because it is going to be in the previously on Buffy for the next, 10
episodes or whatever.
2 months of TV watching.
I think so that one of the motivating factors for this episode in terms of Xander's character as well is we get some specific characterization, which is being obviously heavily implied in many places, but not as presented, of his parents being above him while he's having friends over and just throwing things at each other and shouting. And I think he specifically calls him alcoholic at one point.
Does he?
I think he does, but if not, it's very clearly like a very domestically kind of like a violent situation.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think is really well written into Xander's character is this kind of like underlying constant suggestion that he is in this very difficult household compared to Buffy or Willow. Well, Willow probably...
Willow's in kind of a slight... he has been portraying a slightly controlling household, but yeah, like not only is he... And he speaks about it in this episode and in the previous episode that he is constantly being saved. He's constantly the loser, the mundane, and take the laugh track away from that. That is actually quite a depressing situation to be in. Yeah. But Buffy, Joyce is obviously doing quite well, even though she's managing Buffy herself. Willow's parents are academics. There is a socioeconomic difference between them and Xander, and I think Xander's character really has to be seen in the light of like a lot of what he develops is like learning behavior and defense mechanisms, and I think that's well represented in his character. And he's now trying to grow into his own person through this stuff that he's doing with Anya. So, it's a better arc for him than I think you could ever anticipate, given where he starts in like season 1 and 2.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do we have any other specific notes we wanted to hit for this episode? I feel like we talked about the actual content of the episode very little here.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a straightforward filling meal of Buffy entertainment. 44 minutes or so of Buffydom.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke and be like, if I was to want to introduce someone to the show, this might be the episode I show them, because that's something that you say about every episode. Okay. So, a couple of Buffy bits there for you there. Okay. Wow.
How do you feel about being the villain of this podcast?
Well, better than you must feel about being the villain of this relationship.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So, actually, no, not better, because being the villain of the relationship means that you don't have to do anything hard and you get to just enjoy yourself all the time.
I'm a fan favorite villain though.
Whereas being the villain of the relationship of the podcast just means that I have to put more effort into saying things.
So I'm kind of like the Spike of our relationship, where you're like the Warren of the podcast. I felt bad as I was saying that.
Okay. I wouldn't call anyone the Spike of a relationship.
Why don't you come up and shoot me in the chest sometime?
Okay, so this is probably going to be the only podcast, if you're listening to Buffy podcasts, who will inform you of this fact. But Nicholas Brendan's brother, Kelly Donovan, actually plays Xander in parts of the episode. We can see both of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know you said that earlier.
Yeah.
I just think it's important to repeat.
I think this is a weird thing to say. I think they look different.
They do.
I think when they stand together, you can be like, this is clearly Nikki Brennan and this is Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly, his teeth are like pointed inwards. Or
he also just doesn't have actor face. He just doesn't express.
He looks uncomfortable and nervous.
Yeah, I think he does a perfectly good job. Do you know what I mean? Given that from all.
He's not an actor. No, yeah. he's been an extra in a couple of things. He also appears in the episode Intervention, because Nicholas Brennan got sick, so they had to sub him in for a couple of scenes.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. The Snoopy dance was first referred to between Xander and Willow in Passion. I just wanted to mention the episode Passion because I love the episode Passion.
It was those plosives, not passion.
So the other thing, I saw a discussion on, I think we both saw this on the Buffy wiki, where they're like, they think that Giles has called someone a toff, and they're like, oh no, a toff, that's a British slang for a bad person or something. And Joel turned to me during the episode and said, they don't mean thought, do they? And I was like, that hoe over there? No, they don't mean that. That's quite a recent verbiage.
That's fair. Yeah.
But also I think that they mean tough, and that's kind of what the Buffy wiki suggests, but they're actually just speaking nonsense. And they're very angry about this. And yeah, the other things I have Babylon 5
probably
reference.
the only reference to Babylon 5 in Xander's commemorative plates, which I really wanted to see.
Yeah,
they weren't displayed.
How much would you pay for a set of of commemorative plates for Babylon 5?
How much would I?
Some.
Where would you?
The problem is some.
See, people don't eat off them. If I could eat off them,
okay,
I would purchase them. Maybe £50.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, well, it depends how many plates you get.
What if it was 5 plates?
£10 each. I think that's fair.
Wow. Okay, do you have any Buffy bits?
No, I actually don't think. I think all the Buffy bits for this episode are so integrated into what the episode is. Do you know what I mean?
It's true. Okay. Well,
fashion was terrible.
Fashion was truly awful. I mean, when Xander was wearing the adult clothes, he did look slightly better, but not significantly better.
He's the hair. He has the quarantine hair, which is compromising the whole thing. I was also confused because he basically wears professional Zoom appropriate slacks and all that kind of stuff, but to go and work on the construction site, so I wasn't certain if he was like going in trying to look for a managerial job, or if he was just like wears a lovely shirt to saw some wood, because everyone else was in like tight white tees and stuff. At
the beginning of the episode, Riley is wearing the most awful orange shirt of all time. Riley's decisions fashion wise are much more controversial in this episode and pretty bad. So he's also wearing a red leather jacket later on, and you suggested it might just be one of Buffy's ones that is baggy. It does. Anya is wearing a very virginal like nice dress when Xander calls her to come see the new apartment,
like a Florence Nightingale kind of night dress.
It's like made of like chiffon or something. And the kind of the classic Xander Harris outfit, I think, appears in this episode, which is the patterned short sleeve shirt over a yellow long sleeve t-shirt that he wears and red pants that he wears for the entirety of the episode because he's
a drain rat. As the bag one, basically.
There's something to be like suggested about like just keeping the bad Xander like locked away and just like not like, keep him just about alive so you can have the good Xander wandering around instead.
True. Yeah, the good Xander doesn't necessarily portray any flaws.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably everything.
I think so. Do you have a death count?
Yeah, just the one death.
Toth,
who gets stabbed in the chest by Buffy.
Very good. Okay, so Joel, what's your rating for this episode?
Oh, what's my rating for this episode? I will give this episode an 8.5 thoughts.
Very good. Tell me about that.
I just think it's a really good episode. It's fun. It's all the characters are fully present, and there's actually I really appreciate the level of interaction between them because I felt a dearth of that towards the like last season-ish second half kind of stuff, so I like living in the world, and I think Nicholas Brennan does a fantastic performance in this episode. I think he really pulls off, and I think whenever he has had a solo episode, he's usually really earned that limelight. So I have to say I just enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to give it 8.0, which is funny because you gave it last episode I think an 8 and I gave it an 8.5. So I'm going to give it 8
.0.
8.0, Zeodorax out of 10. Yeah, I just really like it. I think it's maybe the touchiest bit filler to a fault, but yeah, I really like it. And again, I will be a little biased when it comes to season 5. I won't be all that like objective. I just quite like season 5. Okay. Should we do the Cordelia chase, Joel?
Let's. So this week on the Cordelia chase, it is an episode of which it is named First Impressions. What to say about this episode? It is a attempt to develop Gunn's character further. So it's very much set in Gunn's territory. It has some good elements to it, which are that basically Cordelia gets a vision about Gunn being in danger while Angel is unavailable. Angel's unavailable because he's been having sleeping extensively because he's under Darla's influence. And Wesley, I don't know, was like at the theatre or whatever. So Cordelia ends up going to try and save Gunn herself, and he doesn't want her help, but she insists, and they have a bit of a buggy comedy fish out of water thing. It is very much portrayed, and I use this specifically as, you know, Gunn is in the hut, you know, that's kind of the tone of it. It's very much about going to sets which are like a D-list version of a set from The Wire. You know, it's kind of how I feel that's kind of it's being.
The Wire was all shot on location, and you know that.
Yeah, it's been characterized, and a lot of a cast of neighborhood characters that are people who I've completely lost the term for this. Car stealers is not a word, but people who lift cars.
Yeah.
And carjackers, that's one.
Or joyriders.
But yeah, these are specifically carjackers who are like stripping them down basically. And there's an issue with a demon pushing on Gunn's territory, a big hulking demon, and there's also a little like sniveling snitch who's telling him about the demon, and the reveal is that this tiny snitch is actually the demon who transforms, etc. And that's kind of it really. The central thing of Gunn trying to control his territory and trying to be the boss of the town and revisiting kind of old acquaintances who are like, hey, you used to hang out with us and now you're not really about anymore, etc. It's not particularly interesting. No. And I'm as much as I would appreciate if there was a storyline in this show that explored a person of color's community in an interesting or a genuine compelling way. This is not it. So I'm glad that like they don't try to do this very often, and they kind of take him out of this setting. But that being said,
basically you're saying that we need to get the black character out of where he's from so that we can get him into a white location surrounded by other white people so he can be interesting.
I really just want these white writers to stop trying to write these scenes, to be honest.
Right. It's like it is. I mean, if there's a black person in the writing room for these, genuine apologies. I'm not aware of that, but like
I would be doubtful. I think I would be confidently doubtful of that. Just because I feel like having watched a lot of media from around this time period, these characters are pulled from certain stock, not necessarily stereotypes, just stock characters. And I think I'm confident in saying they're more broadly written than the characters that are set in a Wolfram and Hart law firm or that kind of thing.
I think so too. I mean, look at like Lila. Where did that character come from? She's just like, she's a well-written, motivated character. She was a lawyer, but also like demonic and all this stuff. And then Gunn is just flatly kind of ghetto-y.
And again, I think J. August Richards does the best he can with the material.
I think
it's just not there from yet.
I agree.
But there are positives to this episode.
The Darla stuff is genuinely intriguing.
The Darla stuff is compelling. They have a series of, she's basically influencing his dreams, and they have a series of surreal dream sequences where he's kind of playing house with Darla. He is in the Loring's bar in Caritas again, doing more singing. We don't see it, unfortunately, but he does sing in The Clowns and Tears for a Clown. There's a bit where they're sunbathing at night in bikini and kind of sun shorts, and it gives an opportunity for both of them to stretch their acting chops a little bit, to interact in a more casual way but also a surrealist way to a certain degree, and that's very good.
Julie Benz is great.
She is fantastic, and I think that this aspect of Cordelia having to strike out by herself wanting to help Gunn. At one point, one of Gunn's acquaintances gets some glass in her neck, and she like helps stymie the bleeding, gets her to the hospital. And a bizarre note is, and as is noted in the production, that the outfit she has on in this episode is specifically the same outfit that Buffy wears in The Gift.
So weird.
At the end of season 5, but which I found out, but she allows to get completely covered in blood because she's trying to save this girl's life. So I think this arc of that Cordelia has really come to understand that what her job is and what her purpose is and what she's good at is helping people, and she can do that by herself, and that she doesn't need to be doing it for money, and she doesn't need to be doing it as Angel's psychic or anything. This episode for me, for Cordelia, was like, there's some kind of try fish out of water stuff where they're in like the party in the ghetto, and it's like she's like, can you show me to the hors d'oeuvres, and she's just clearly very white, etc., whatever. But I think Cordelia's development,
she also suggests that one of the party goers is a sex worker.
A working girl is the term that she uses. But I think Cordelia's development from Buffy to here is really compelling. I think, as always, Charisma Carpenter does a great job.
She does.
So at most, I'd say maybe a 5 fail feminist gestures.
I was going to give it a 6 fail feminist gestures. I like the Cordelia like stuff and just the Darla stuff.
See, it's very split down the middle for me, because everything about the characters, about our ensemble cast, is good. Everything about the plot of the episode is bad. I actually was struggling to remember what it was.
Me too.
So
we watched this last night as well.
Yeah, I know. But yeah,
one more notable thing about it is that at one point Wesley comes into the room to check on, or Angel attacks Wesley in the room because he's woken up from a dream, and he just goes for Wesley because he thinks he's in danger.
Pins him to the ground.
Yeah, pins him to the ground, and then Wesley's like, so uncomfortable that you're naked. And the next shot, or the shot previously, showed David Boreanaz in his boxers, and it's actually just a widescreen issue in the sense that like the widescreen shot has him. Which the season 2 DVDs of Angel going forward is presented in widescreen, bizarrely, even though season 4 of Buffy onwards is. But yeah, and he's just clearly in his boxers. It was just funny.
Yeah, and not remarkably no homo scene.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, no, I was saying it's not, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Wait, you think it's a remarkably no homo?
I thought it could have been worse.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but maybe I'm too inside I'm too Stockholmed by this point. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. And I think next week there'll be more episodes of both Buffy and Angel that we'll talk about.
I hope there aren't. How nice would it be if it just like the world just slightly changed and just there's no more episodes of Buffy. We've already done it.
That's Superstar next week on the Jonathan show.
Yeah.
What is next week's episode of Buffy?
I didn't take it down. Oh, sorry, I did. Out of My Mind.
Great. So thank you very much for joining us. We hope you're well. We have a storm coming in, on the storm front approaching here in Ireland, which we're very excited for.
Which one was it again? Eileen? No,
Kyle, I think.
No, it's not Kyle.
Frank? No, I'm just saying names.
I think it's a lady.
No, it was a man this time, because it was a lady storm a couple of days ago.
What was they called again? Storm. What was the last one? Oh, this one's Storm Francis. So I presumed it was Francis as the woman's name rather than Francis.
It's a very Irish thing, I think, isn't it? I don't think you get a lot of female Francis.
Francis outside of Ireland. No, you don't.
And specifically, it's Francis as opposed to Francis, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I one of like the people I knew growing up, who died when I was like 16 was called Francis. So she was a lovely woman. She used to drive me to school. Okay.
So thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please do let us know. It makes your day. Tell your friends, tell your thoughts. And we will see you next time, dear listener, on Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys.